Well, that was rather unabrupt. That was kind of a slow start. Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Jonathan Alvin, and this is NycosRPG. This is Game Master Soapbox, and I am still dealing with the aftermath of a most recent Bell's palsy attack. So, apologize for my speaking out of one side of my mouth. Just a characteristic I have to put up with. And today we are pursuing another angle of the Game Master Soapbox, and that is the overall topic of what are the benefits of role playing. With nearly 50 years behind the screen as a game master, and that long and a little bit more opportunity of role play, the benefits of role playing are many and varied, and I kind of want to go over them little by little. If you haven't yet done so, make sure you click the follow button so you're kept up on what we're doing every week, and also get a chance to go over to NycosRPG on YouTube and give us a like there as well. So, all right, so we're talking about what are the benefits of role playing, and these are actually specifically the individual benefits. What is it that the game will do for you? What is it you can learn, develop, and gain from playing a role play game? And with all of the time that I've played, I've had a long time to think about this. As a matter of fact, many people go through life and they have hobbies they pick up for a while and they put them down and they come back to them or whatever. But the unique benefit of having done this for the entire time is that being immersed in the mechanism of role play, there's not been a place really to escape out of it, and therefore I can kind of measure the relative success and whatever of these categories just by sheer personal experience. So the first thing I'll say is you can develop an increased sense of perspective and paradigm, and I think I put those p words in because they are the things that I have the most problem with Bell's palsy because he is so hard to say. The one's perspective depends on where they are, of course. The way way our eyes work is they work in tandem and they coordinate. You're able to determine how far away something is because your eyes are measuring it from two microscopically different angles every time you move your head. And this idea of perspective means that you're looking at things in ways that perhaps just you might not have otherwise. And in a role play environment, of course, you are dealing with visualization and mental gymnastics and all of these. We're going to go into these a little bit later, but the concept is that the position from which you are looking at the world determines what you see. And so by choosing to play a role other than yourself, you are giving yourself almost like a virtual secondary position from which to observe. And so things that mean something in this world, if they're played through in a role play game, may end up feeling like or seeming to mean something else. I noticed this the other day. We had a player who's playing a rather unique character, and of course, every role playing character in the player's mind, at least, you want to have as unique. But in this case, the player's personal perspective changed because he was a person who, in his normal daily life, is kind of a people pleaser. And suddenly he's playing a character who is of an elevated social class, is the receiver of accolades and the receiver of other people's awareness rather than just simply being somebody who experiences the world vicariously. And that allowed the person to see not only his own actions in a game as being heroic or brave or astute. He's able to see that other people, other persons in the game world are seeing those as well. And when you do that, when you shift the focus, you shift the income. What comes into your head, what comes into your eyes, what comes into your mind. And a change in perspective and in paradigm isn't always a good thing. It can be, you can suddenly see yourself as being less clever, less wise, less brave, whatever, because of comparisons that you can make from the outside looking in. But this is important either way because these benefits give us a globalist approach to the world. We're able to see that it's not just an individual in the world, but we are part of something larger. Now, in many cases, and I would say nearly all cases, it leads to a heightened empathy and awareness. We become uh, enjoined, as it is in the game. You become there's almost an injunction to play the persona with a different set of values than yourself. And when that occurs, when you actually are looking through those different divergent eyes, and you're looking out at the world with a new perspective, you're suddenly aware of things that you might not have noticed. There were in one of our recent scenes, there was some violence that had been perpetrated in a community. It was in a rather open way, and the players in the game did something that I've never seen before, and it has everything to do with the fact that they were actually being present in this scene. Is they started looking around for children who might have been exposed to this violence in the story. They were looking around to say, "Oh, we're in a community. There's got to be some kids around. This is not a thing for kids to see. This needs to be explained, or they need to be given a chance to process it." And by doing so, it changed my perspective on how to play scenes. Because, yeah, if you're in a community where there are children bound, children are absolutely curious, children will get into places they're not supposed to get into, and suddenly, if you're aware of that, you're going to act differently. And it's a nice little gauge or mechanism to have your players have to become aware of these little nuances that in a vacuum or in a video game you wouldn't even be exposed to. You wouldn't have to consider what these things mean. But when you are in a role play game and you are playing a persona that is not yourself, then suddenly you can become more aware of what's going on around. Especially in this case, because the player was participating, was playing a gnome, a little person, a fairy, a very small individual who was looking at the world from those eyes down lower on the ground, and that simple thing put him on eye to eye level with the children in the community. And when we are truly role playing, when we're actually stepping into the persona and becoming, for the sake of the game, that person, we are going to be more aware of the challenges that someone like that faces. As a 18-inch tall person in this case, uh, realizing that the door handles and such were going to be a challenge automatically just because they're set higher on the wall than their own stature, suddenly was a barrier and a uh, challenge that would have to be handled. And so it becomes a way to improve your uh, problem solving skill. I mean, if I had to worry about door handles being a foot and a half over my height, I might be a little concerned as well. But it leads to, of course, hilarity and humor too, because the problems of a small person being put into the mind of a taller person, they now see a variety of problems coming from everywhere around them. Everything is a different challenge because now your paradigm has shifted. And this alteration also leads to maybe improved problem solving, maybe an awareness of blind spots in your problem solving. If the situation is your character is you're playing is antisocial, when it comes to getting something done that you need to have done with a group, it becomes more difficult, right? So therefore, you're beginning to become a better problem solver because you're going to be aware of the holes in your problem solving mechanism. And even it could be ones that were accidental or incidental or intentional, but these social situational issues become a driving point for the fictional adventure. You're going to have to consider, if you are of a different species, how that species is perceived at a specific point, and what challenges you might have with the environment you're in. For example, there are the beings who are described as being from the Everdark or from the alternate dimensions. These beings naturally have a heightened awareness of the differences, but they'll also have a very unique concept of the um, similarities. So, a person who is, for example, traveling through a realm that is associated with a plane of aether, maybe simply takes for granted the things that are normally invisible, normal things that are hidden and undiscovered. And as they play through, they consider what to do with those going forward with everything else that they're doing, because now that is a part of their motive or their mode of operation. And we, as players, when we become aware in a social standing kind of way, we can actually tackle issues that are culturally taboo or not comfortable or whatever. And you could be literally called out in game for an affront that you certainly didn't think you were doing, but also weren't even aware of because of cultural biases that the player's species may not be aware of. And this leads to a conversation, even if it doesn't fix anything. It does lead to a wider conversation about what people do. And this is really the basis of the Nycos RPG. And one of the reasons why we focus so much on the role play aspect of imagination is that activated imagination is an imagination that is being useful. It's not just a tool for a flight of fancy. It's not just a engine for entertainment. It's actually a powerhouse of potential for the player, because they are now expanding their mental capacity. And I'm sure that I'm going to get grief over that comment, but when you think about imaginary space, when you think about a structure that you can never actually engage with, there's no actual physical location to put your hands on, your imagination skills have to fill in gaps. And while at first there are even unrecognized gaps, as time goes by, you become more acutely aware of them. And so when you are doing a description of something for other people, you're going to be considering what might be their gaps. What is it that they can't wrap their minds around, and find ways to provide the information to fill that gap, and to give them the at least philosophical ground upon which to stand while being involved in that imaginary setting. Now, this also leads to an exploration of identity. As I've said before, there are as many reasons to play a role play game as there are different role players. But generally speaking, the concept of being a person who sees their life as a cartoon, as a alternate experience that has no ramifications, definitely causes the discussion, or at least a thought process about what we are actually really doing here, who we really are, and what that reality actually means in terms of other beings. If we are not exploring our identity in real time, in our real lives, we are not advancing anyway. We're not learning. We're not becoming a part of community. Instead, we are holding on to tropes. We're holding on to externally imposed definitions. And To me, role play is like the final frontier. It's the place that we as mental beings can go to consider what is beyond the sphere, what is outside the box, what is across the street, what is behind the curtain. All of these curiosities, when they are expressed in a role play game, tell us a little bit more about ourselves. Tell us a little bit more about what our potentials are. And this idea of pursuing identity is really, for me at least, most important when I'm dealing with how I interact with other beings. When we are not considerate, when we're not taking into account other people's perspective, other entities in the room, so to speak, it's fundamentally how a sociopath operates. They're operating outside of an understanding of what the norms are, or even how to engage with the norms. And so, a role play environment gives every person the opportunity to step into that otherworldly place where we are not ourselves and consider what the self really means. What is it that we are? Because in a role play game, we can bring with us as much of our personality as we desire and can leave as much behind as we choose. But this very exploration of what it is to be a person and what it is to be ourselves uniquely gives us a better feel for what we actually know and do in the world. Having been a game master for, as I said, for almost 50 years, goal setting and course correction are watchwords, if you will. When you are creating a persona for a game, there is at least some goal setting that has to pop into your mind about what the persona you're going to be playing is doing. What is their reason for being? What is it they want to do? And this is captured in character creation using the NycosRPG system. When you talk about the person's place or their estates, we're looking at not only their origin culture, but we're also talking about what did they take from it and what did they gather, what did they learn, and what motivates them. And by having these two kind of polar opposites to consider when you're building a persona, you're adding depth because now you're not just saying, I start at this point, go. I'm starting at this point with this part of a background, this part of a culture, and this part of a motive. And with those pieces in place, we start to be able to develop the idea of course correction and goal setting. I want to go from point A to point Z, and here's the order of the things that I would like to do. And while I'm doing that, what am I contributing to? What am I bringing to the table to adjust my direction, either to keep me on course or perhaps change my motivation and change the direction of my course? All of these pieces that are natural in a role play game, that are just an extension of the experience, in the real world are highly valuable assets. When we have the ability to set a goal, go through the steps and the project, the process, and actually accomplish, those are hugely effective tools that we can pick up from a game environment and possibly bring over to our physical lives as well. Because when we have goal setting, when we have this directional focus capability, then we can actually do things. And I think a player's from a player's perspective, the idea of agency and purpose is critical. If you're playing in a role play game and the game master doesn't have your characters causing world changing events or interacting with individuals and changing the direction of their lives, there's a real loss. You're actually missing out on a really critical portion of being in a role play game, because we in this world may want to be heroes, but we may not be heroic. And at least in a role play game, we have the opportunity to play the heroics, even if it's not in our personal nature. And this actually expands our nature's framework. And having a real reason for being, a real direction in life, is essential to a role play game. Unless, of course, you're playing it as a cartoon fill in and only using it for diversion. And while that's perfectly noble means of role play or method of role play, it really does a disservice to you as a person, because having the ability to develop a sense of agency that what you do really matters is it's a rush. There's a physical response to realizing the way you just did mattered. You know, you just saved a family from a fire. You just stopped a villain in his tracks. You just uh, put a way of escape into place for people that are downtrodden. These are all things that we want to be able to accomplish. And in a role play game, if the game master is sensitive and aware and desirous of your advancement, then he's going to give these to you, and he's going to allow you to experience levels of human compassion, human um, connection that wouldn't be there otherwise. Now, the most obvious of the benefits of role playing games is the mental gymnastics of how far away are things, what does at what distance can you actually touch them, what are the uh, audio triggers that we normally don't think about, what are the audit the or sensory inputs that we don't normally pursue. When you are playing a role play game, especially if you were playing an alternate species, you have a real chance to experience what those variances might do and how they might affect you. And these overt realizations, these overt tool use benefits of utilizing mental gymnastics or improved visualization really help with the sense of uh, location and the co-location that occurs when you're in a role play game. Because obviously you're sitting at a table or lounging in the living room, and at the same time you are climbing Mount Everest or fighting off a dragon. These differing uh, paradigms, these differing perspectives, which brings us full circle, give us the opportunity to become the heroic one, take the risks that we wouldn't individually. Many people use phrases like YOLO or Leroy Jenkins to talk about how they approach role play environment. But I submit that just literally approaching it like an infant, like a child, and ooh, what's this? Ooh, what's this? Ooh, what's this? That kind of uh, mental awareness will make your real life world just as magical. Now, I say that, and there are people that are rolling their eyes right now, saying, "Role play games don't do that for me." And it's like, well, all I can say is that there are changes in our real time consciousness that can be brought onto us. Our conscientiousness about other people, our awareness of the import of actions is played out in spades, if you will, in a role play game. And this ability to make changes, have a sense of agency, activate our imagination, and see the world through a different set of eyes is immeasurably valuable, because we normally only live one life. And having the opportunity, if only for a few moments, to live in another place and time, in another structured environment, and with a differing perspective, we give ourselves literally another day, another life, another set of memories. And that process makes us better people. Now, we are at 11:35, so we're into our first commercial break, and I apologize for that. This is Jonathan Albin, and this is Game Master's Soapbox, and we are talking about the benefits of role playing. Again, I want to apologize for a moment with my speech pattern and such. I have a condition called Bell's palsy, which causes me to have literally one half of my face is not properly functioning. If you haven't noticed, it kind of slopes a little bit, and it may sound a little bit like I'm, as they would say, having a stroke. But this is a neurological condition that doesn't impede in any fashion, and it's not. While the argument of whether or not I'm a quote healthy person can always be argued, uh, other than the inconvenience of my speech pattern, it doesn't have any real effect on life. Other than I would say it actually improves my skin condition because you notice this side of my head doesn't have any of those nasty nerve lines, stress lines. So maybe it means it's my body's gone on skin saver. Get it like a screensaver, skin saver. I'm kidding. So anyway, we have concluded the materials that I wanted to cover for today. If you like what you've seen, make sure you follow the channel and subscribe to the YouTube as well at NycosRPG. And also, if you get a chance to or want to get additional information about what we're doing, check out our Patreon account at patreon.com/Nykos. I am going to go ahead and call it for the night officially. And if you want to contact me, of course, you can join the Discord and the link down below. And if you do that, then you can actually jump into the chat room and talk with me. I'm glad to talk to you in our voice room. So have a great day. We'll talk to you next time. I'm Jonathan Alvin, and this has been Nykos RPGs